Hey, it's Dustin with the Davidson Group here with another episode of Real Talk. Today we're going to be talking about closing costs and what that means for a buyer. You know, a couple of days ago I had a conversation around this, and we were talking about really high level information gathering stage for the buyer. You know, we're wanting to know about financing, and that was a conversation to be had, but we started with this, well, how much money do you have for a down payment or to purchase your home? And as we were working through those numbers, you know, it was, hey, I've got X amount of dollars. And so for the sake of example, let's say $10,000. I said, hey, that's great, you know, $10,000. And of course, they had been online and looking at a couple of different websites and had assumed that with a $10,000 down payment, they could buy X amount of home. But I had to stop them and say, you know, the $10,000 is great, but something else we have to consider are the closing costs associated with that purchase of a home. You know, down payment and closing costs are different things. And closing costs are broken down into a lot of times the closing costs and then the prepaids. And so we had this conversation, and it made me think, you know, if this is a question a buyer's having, not an uncommon conversation I have, maybe I should do a real talk about it and put it out there so that way we've got information that someone else can potentially find some benefit out of. So let's talk about it. You know, when you purchase a home, you're going to have a down payment. Well, most of the time you have a down payment. You know, there's a variety of different loan programs, and those loan programs range from 0% down or 100% financing all the way up to 20 and 30% down, depending on what type of lender you're working with, what type of property you're trying to obtain. And so we work through those, right? And in this market, because it's such a seller's market, and because we want to be as competitive as possible, we really like to obtain the financing, one, that works for the buyer. But more importantly than that, we want it to be beneficial and enticing to a seller. So what do I mean by that? I mean that if you have the ability to purchase FHA, which is 3.5% down, it's a great loan program. I'm not saying anything wrong about it, but there's guidelines and stipulations, and there's just a little bit more that goes into purchasing a home FHA. But if you can buy conventional, well, you remove some of those pieces. And in removing some of those pieces, you make it easier for a seller to say, yeah, we'll go with them. And then if you have more money to put down, even though you could purchase a different type or have a different type of loan, you then have the ability to edge yourself up and be a little bit more competitive when you're presenting an offer. So we talked through all that. But you know what? We definitely believe that homeownership should be attainable for anybody. And if they don't have any money down, or they're going to purchase with a government-backed loan program, we want to run with that. But we still have this issue of closing costs. See, closing costs are just an inevitable part of purchasing a home. Let's think about some of the things that we have when we talk about closing costs. We have costs associated with title fees. We have costs associated with insurance. We have costs associated with taxes. We have costs associated with most individuals who get a mortgage, origination fees and appraisal fees, and there's just varying pieces throughout that process. And so we have to account for that. And we often lean on a lender to help us through that process because each individual person is different. Someone may be buying down and paying points to get a better rate. Someone may have a couple of things that they're going to pay off, like a credit card or something like that. They're going to come into the overall equation of what can I use with this money or what can I purchase. So in this example we talked about, hey, if you've got $10,000 to put in towards a property, let's assume that half of that money is going to go towards your closing costs, and the other half is what you have for a down payment, and then let's work for that. Again, these are hypothetical situations, but they're conversations that we're in all the time, especially whenever we talk to individuals who are high level. What I mean by high level is they're gathering information. You know, they're just embarking on this home purchasing process, and they don't really know the questions that they should be asking. They don't really know how they should navigate through, and whenever they turn to us, which we absolutely love, by the way, but when they turn to us, we need to be able to give them an answer and point them in the right direction, so that way they're not just wandering around in the wilderness. They've got a direct path and a way to get to a home, right? And so we help set them up with that. We surround ourselves with processes. We surround ourselves with vendor partners. We surround ourselves with opportunities to streamline that process as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Sometimes it takes 18 months. Sometimes it takes 18 days. And so we want to be able to move and move at the speed and the pace in which the individual is ready. You know, often I talk to people and they're 3 to 6 months out. That's an arbitrary number because in their head they have things that they have to do. But in reality, if the right home came along, they'd be ready to go today. And so we have to leverage that. We have to be prepared. And as you've seen in other content that we've put out, you have to be in a position where you can move today if the right property hits. Anyways, just something to think about. It's a conversation. I wanted to put it out there that there's a difference between a down payment and closing costs and how those closing costs are broken down. Just so you know, in this conversation of closing costs, there are closing costs associated on the seller side too. And so there's different sides. In fact, one way you can write an offer is to pay for the seller's closing costs. Again, that's a strategy, and that's something that we would talk about in a specific instance, but just thinking through what this looks like. Hey, thank you for taking the time to join me today. Hope this information has been just that information for you that you could use, or maybe you know someone who could use it. Pass it along to them. I'd be so grateful. I hope to talk to you soon, and have a great day.